On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union fractured into 15 separate nations, but one citizen was forgotten, floating 400 kilometers above Earth. His name was Sergei Krikalev. He was a cosmonaut trapped in orbit, holding a passport for a country that no longer existed. Looking at this photograph of the Mir space station orbiting high above the Earth, it's easy to imagine a clean, highly advanced scientific environment. Krikalev launched here in May 1991 for what was supposed to be a routine 5-month deployment. But the interior of Mir was a cramped, decaying metal tube. The power grids were failing, causing the lights to constantly flicker, and the entire station smelled permanently of rotting apples. The scent came from a severe biological threat. The high humidity inside the station, combined with the dead skin cells shed by the crew, had birthed a highly resilient mutant strain of fungus. This mold was so aggressive it could survive intense space radiation. More alarming to the crew, it was actively devouring the rubber seals around the station's windows, the only fragile barrier separating Krikalev from the deadly vacuum of space. Yet, while Krikalev fought a daily battle against this decaying machine, the real threat to his survival was unfolding on the planet directly below him. By August 1991, a military coup erupted against Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, pictured here. Tanks rolled into the streets of Moscow, and the centralized state began to violently fracture. From orbit, Krikalev could only watch. Because his official communications were tightly controlled by Mission Command, he relied on an amateur ham radio operator in Australia to feed him uncensored updates about the chaos back home. As the Soviet republics rapidly declared independence, a massive logistical problem emerged. The Baikonur Cosmodrome, the sole launch pad for all Soviet space missions, suddenly belonged to the newly independent nation of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan demanded rent for the use of their facility. The newly formed Russian government, however, was completely bankrupt and had no money to pay. To raise cash, Russia made a barter deal. In this Soyuz spacecraft schematic, there are exactly 3 seats. Russia sold the passenger slots to visiting astronauts. By filling those seats, the spot meant for Krikalev's replacement was given away. Mission Control had traded Krikalev's ride home for cash, sacrificing his return to patch a geopolitical bankruptcy. When the visiting astronauts finished their short-term mission, they packed up to leave. Mission Control presented Krikalev with a choice. He could take the station's only remaining escape pod home with them, but doing so meant abandoning Mir completely. The engineering reality left him cornered. Krikalev was the only trained flight engineer on board. If he left, Mir's active life support, oxygen generators, and manual power systems would rapidly fail without him to repair them. Abandoning his post meant a multi-billion-dollar scientific achievement would fall out of orbit and burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. Faced with this, Krikalev made a defining decision. He chose to stay, voluntarily becoming a hostage of the decaying machine to keep the station alive. As his mission stretched far past the 5-month mark into the unknown, his body began to break down. Without gravity, his muscles severely atrophied, and as shown in this animation, his dense bone tissue steadily hollowed out, becoming dangerously porous. Down on Earth, hyperinflation reduced his monthly salary to the equivalent of just $2.50. His family struggled to afford basic groceries. Krikalev was sacrificing his physical health and his family's livelihood to save a space station owned by a ghost state that could no longer even pay him. Finally, in March 1992, a financial lifeline arrived from outside the shattered Soviet bloc. Germany paid Russia $24 million to send their own astronaut, pictured here, up to Mir. This massive injection of capital gave Russia the funds needed to launch Krikalev's replacement engineer. On March 25, 1992, after a staggering 311 days in space, Krikalev boarded a capsule. It plummeted through the atmosphere and slammed into a frozen, desolate field. When the recovery team extracted him, his physical state was alarming. He was incredibly pale, sweating profusely, and completely unable to stand under the crushing weight of Earth's gravity. The team had to carry him to a chair and wrap him in this heavy fur coat to keep him warm. As he sat there, the visual irony of his uniform was impossible to ignore. His spacesuit was stitched with the letters USSR and a bright red flag for a nation that had ceased to exist months ago. He had launched from the Soviet Union. but he touched down in the newly independent country of Kazakhstan, holding a Soviet passport that was now entirely worthless. History gave him a unique title, the last Soviet citizen. He was the man who outlived the empire that sent him to the stars. His ordeal stands as a testament to duty. When his home state entirely abandoned him, he chose to suffer in a decaying metal tube rather than abandon his post.